will fit the bill. It's called Agenda 21, made intentionally vague. It's called sustainable development. Most people have no idea what that means. Sustainable development is about getting rid of our single-family homes, farms, to live in high-density human settlements, using buzzwords like smart growth and mixed use. Visioning meetings where the stakeholders facilitate with a predetermined outcome, manipulating consensus and railroading people into thinking it's their idea.
But what they've done is the market has been inflated, prices have been increased to the point where nobody can afford to live in London apart from the super rich. And all of this regeneration is the first stage of turning London into an elite city. And of course, these new flats that are being built are not for the people locally. Now, 400,000 are meant to be moved out of London. That's people and families. Council meetings where you may be able to get involved are all run on a thing called Delphi technique, which is a way of controlling group consensus.
The stakeholders facilitate with a predetermined outcome, manipulating consensus and railroading people into thinking it's their idea.
2 to 4 or 5% of Americans will put up with crappy bike lanes. About 60% of Americans are actually interested in cycling lanes. So what does this mean? This means redesigning our streets for protected bike lanes.
This grand scheme, and then to run with it just makes me very nervous. And I moved to this area because I like the big backyards and things like that.
We are only equipped this morning to deal with the priorities that are up on the screen.
Unfortunately, because we have a fairly packed program, we can't be fielding all of the questions that this would be raising. But those kind of questions, those kind of comments are exactly what we want to read about on those worksheets.
We don't understand. If you aren't feeling comfortable with these choices, you don't have to participate in the exercise, certainly. But
we don't have a none of the above. Why is there no none of the above?
We've got a couple of options here. The first option we call business as usual. It's a bit of a funny option because it's really looking at historical trends and just simply accommodating growth based on the same sort of development that we've had for the last 20 or 30 years. The second option is planned future, where we're looking at the sort of the existing plans throughout the Bay Area and following that.
The UN is governing us. Top down, mandating one size fits all. Cities, now regions, being dictated to by unelected, unaccountable bureaucracy. Local officials are just figureheads, deceived, made to think the general plan is our plan. It's not. Climate action plan, cookie cutter out of the local UN Agenda 21 playbook.
They've now stopped traffic in most parts of that borough, so they've created traffic chaos all day long. This impacts on self-employed people in this way. Those people who are in this village area, of which there are now 3, the first one was originally called Walthamstow Village, but the main road through there is closed between 10 a.m. in the morning and 10 p.m. at night. And the council have raked in millions of pounds of fines because the signs are so high people can't see them. It also means that emergency vehicles can't get in. This is another problem. Deliveries can't get in either. So they've created traffic chaos. But
you're describing there, Mark, what you're describing there is making life unbearable for people.
Absolutely, especially for the motorist, and we can get onto that later.
Clear lines are being drawn on Queens Boulevard. Residents either like the new bike lanes or they don't.
I hardly see a bike on Queens Boulevard.
A lot of cyclists may not be on Queens Boulevard right now because they may not consider it a safe route.
Raffaele Federico, manager at the Italian Charities of America on Queens Boulevard and Van Loon Street, says he and neighbors like Johnny Jafar aren't happy. Valuable parking along the median outside his building is now gone and replaced by bike lanes. How long does it take you to find parking then?
At least now it's very hard. Maybe it could be 20 minutes, maybe half an hour just to find a parking.
The local community board voted against the bike lanes back in May, but Mayor de Blasio pushed the plan forward anyway, saying, quote, "I respect those who disagree with us, but in the end, the safety of our neighbors and our children is the most fundamental responsibility we have in this work."
Think globally, act locally. Thank you. God bless you all.
They're trying to destroy self-employment. What's happening here with America and indeed many other countries? This is a global action plan implemented locally. The goals of Agenda 21 are to get everybody into poverty and dependence. And the way you do that is you inflate property prices. So, for instance, those kids who are moving into Walthamstow, their parents want to help them, don't they?
Of course
they want them to have a much better place. You know, they want to get a little flat at least. They don't want them to be renting. So what they do is they will probably remortgage their own houses or even sell them and move into smaller ones. So the big family home outside London, or at least the semi-detached, which is now a big family home, will be sold to fund the younger children going into tiny apartments. Because you see what's happening. Aspirations are being lowered. What they're doing is they're attracting the big money in by socially cleansing out the indigenous population and bringing in a trendy population which already has some money behind it.
Yeah.
So I'm talking about social enterprise and institutional interventions in sustainability. Maud, when she introduced me, mentioned that for a while I set up and ran a social enterprise called Carbon Retirement. What the organisation was doing, and it was a company, was attempting to reform the carbon offset market, which probably many of you have heard stories about the offset market. Probably 99% of them are bad.
Global warming. Sea levels are on the rise. The weather is becoming increasingly more extreme and unpredictable. All of these are direct consequences of our greenhouse gas emissions, and a trend we must stop now. A carbon unit is a permit to emit 1 ton of CO2. This is equal to the emissions of a one-way flight from Oslo to Bangkok for one person, or 5 months of driving by an average Norwegian motorist. So how does the emission trading scheme actually work? The emission trading scheme determines how much CO2 and other greenhouse gases we can emit. In 1997, most of the countries in the world signed the Kyoto Protocol. The aim of this agreement is that all industrialized countries should reduce their total emissions of greenhouse gases by at least 5% from 2008 to 2012, compared to their emissions in 1990. The UN distributes quotas of carbon units to those industrialized countries that have signed the treaty. These units set a limit on the level of emissions. This limit is equivalent to the total amount of CO2 that these countries are permitted to emit, and which is less than the anticipated emissions. Some countries are so successful in reducing their emissions that they simply don't need all the carbon units they've been allocated, while other countries may struggle to reduce their emissions and need more units. Countries may, therefore, buy and sell carbon units. The price of tradable units depends on how many there are in circulation. Similar to a stock exchange, prices vary according to supply and demand. Each country is individually responsible for deciding how to cut its emissions. Heavy industry is often responsible for a large share of a country's CO2 emissions. Many countries have therefore decided that these industries must make the largest contribution towards emission reduction.
And that's kind of with good reason in the vast majority of cases. So what we were trying to do was use emissions trading as a means of allowing people to offset in a way that was genuinely robust and achievable. So we'd facilitate purchases of credits from the emissions trading scheme, pollution allowances basically, take them out of the system on behalf of businesses who voluntarily wanted to offset or individuals, and reduce the cap down in the emissions trading scheme so heavy industry couldn't pollute.
That's right, Veronica. Right here in 2006 is when then Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger signed the first cap-and-trade bill into law. And so he was back today to watch our current governor sign a new law that would extend cap-and-trade to 2030.
If we don't do something about it, it is the end of the world, as we know. And you're here witnessing one of the key milestones in turning around this carbonized world into a decarbonized, sustainable future.
The program sets a certain amount of greenhouse gas, the cap, and allows polluters to buy and sell credits to stay under the cap. Brown says California is an example for the world.
That America did not drop out of the Paris Agreement. There's only one man that dropped out. Can't they just think about it for a second and say, maybe we should stop lying to the people. Stop lying to the people. Stop it!
This is all happening now. Sustainable development has nothing to do with improving the planet. It has everything to do with the takedown of what we have. In follow-up to the mispresent of treason entered into public record, it is critical that actions be taken to reverse, reject the treasonous, destructive policies and grants of UN Agenda 21, like the Climate Action Plan, which subverts our constitutional rights and sovereignty. Think how feel if you could not pledge allegiance. They are not just moving borders, they are eliminating them. Please go to freedomadvocates.org and learn how other cities are fighting to keep their private property and their freedom.
Have no doubt about climate change and how committed we have to be regarding this issue.
The second option is Plan Future.
We adopt America's goals for 2030 to get our country back on track and to end the stupid wars.
It's reduced deaths caused by malaria and childbirth. It's increased literacy rates by millions. Millions of kids go to school.
Take the BS anymore. Can you say that? I'm not going to take the BS anymore.
I want it all, yeah. See, I want it all.
Stop lying to the people. Stop it.
They're trying to destroy self-employment. The goals of Agenda 21 are to get everybody into poverty.